Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Tuesday, March 17th, 2026 edition of the Comox Valley Regional District Board meeting. Happy St. Patrick's Day to all those that celebrate the occasion, and welcome to the above average size gallery here in the room today. Also welcome to Director Grieve, who's attending online. Just want to mention that, again, like every meeting, we are privileged to live, work, and play here on the unceded traditional territories of the Comox First Nation. And right off the bat on the agenda, we have Call to Action 89, which deals with sports and reconciliation. And we call upon the federal government to amend the Physical Activity and Sport Act to support reconciliation by ensuring that policies to promote physical activity as a fundamental element of health and well-being, reduce barriers to sport participation, increase the pursuit of excellence in sport, and build capacity in the Canadian sports system are inclusive of Aboriginal peoples. We will now go to moving the adoption of the minutes from February 24th. And any questions or comments about those minutes? All right, anyone opposed to approving? Motion carries. On to item D1, which is a rise and report. Talking about the addition to the reserve letter of support, and I'll send things over to CAO Warren. Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks. Good afternoon to the board. Just simply a note here to say that at the February 10th meeting, the board did pass a resolution around a letter of support for Comox First Nations application for an addition to reserve. The statement here is included on the open agenda for the sake of putting it out there as the board rose and reported on that matter. Simple as that.
Great, and no vote or motion is required. Perfect. Any questions or comments from the directors? All right, moving on to item E, petitions and delegations. We do have a delegation here with Moto Car Sharing Co-op. Sylvain and Sandra, welcome, and you're welcome to come up to the podium here and present. There's a little button there you can hit, and I'll turn your mic on. Just if you, okay, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation. My name is Sandra Phillips. I will be joined by Sylvain Solaire, our Director for Strategic Partnership and Government Relations, in a minute. You've invited us to talk a little bit about car sharing. And we will do just that. Quick introduction about Moto, but also about car sharing and in different models. And then Sylvain will join to share a couple case studies about car sharing in small urban municipalities where Moto is actually running. Real quick, I recognize that the slide is probably very small. There's a few different car sharing types. Moto is a round trip car share model where essentially you pick up the car in the same location that you return it back to. It is a great community fit for all community sizes, small or big, because we don't have a minimum requirement for fleet. The vehicles are placed very strategically in collaboration with our members or the communities we're in. It has a high potential for electrification, and I will talk about this in a minute. Moto has 1 in 5 electric vehicles at the moment. And the typical use cases are planned trips. So you know exactly what you need to do, even if you stitch things together, but you know when you go and when you need the car. We've been around since 1997. We're a cooperative, which means members own Moto. We have 35,000 members. Half of them are cooperative members. The other half are on a different plan called the monthly, which is a subscription-based plan. We have about 1,000 businesses that are using our service, 1,000 vehicles in 25 communities across BC. You can see there's a large cluster in Metro Vancouver, Victoria all the way up to Nanaimo. We're in Kelowna, and then we're in Squamish. 55% of BC residents have expressed interest in car sharing. This is not our own number. This is across the province. So there's clearly interest. What makes Moto quite unique and what we're quite proud of, 1 in 5 of our cars are electric. 41% of our members have used an electric car. This has gone significantly up between the beginning of 2024 and this year. A third of our members live close to an electric car, and 71% of our members have given up or not purchased a car because of Moto. Moto replaces about 1 in 13 vehicles. We have all sizes of vehicles, from a Fiat E500, so very small and funky, to I just came with a Kia Soul, which I will tell you the sound system is terrible, but other than that, it's a great car. We have bike racks and ski racks. We have electric cars, and everything is booked through the app. You sign up, you book through the app, you pay, you pick as long as you need the car, you return it back to the same location. So pretty simple. We brought you a couple of case studies of other municipalities where we're operating in already that have a very similar footprint to the Comox Valley. Langford, Squamish, and Central Saanich. All of them have limited transportation options beyond personal vehicle, a bit of public transport, but not the plethora of options that you have in Metro Vancouver. There's a strong desire from the municipality to change it. And there is an understanding that car sharing is a community amenity. So it provides really a service to the residents that it's beyond just putting a few cars there. And I can't stress this enough, successful programs typically involve an active role from the municipality, which is why we're here. Sylvain will speak to the case studies because he's lived them.
Thank you, Sandra. Good afternoon, everyone. Okay, I should have used bigger fonts. So there is a table on the top right-hand side where you're going to see some stats on the 3 municipalities where we'll present case studies, plus Courtenay, Comox, and Cumberland. They were from the 2021 census. So if I got something wrong, please come see me and tell me where we need to update this. So looking at Langford, which is west of Victoria, we started providing service in 2021 with 3 vehicles. The municipality has been using the service since the onset. They currently have about 26 employees registered to use the service. Upfront, they guaranteed a minimum revenue, irrespective of how the vehicle were being used. And that was in order for us to focus on other things than worrying about the financial aspect, which was engaging with the community, trying to spread the word. And they helped us doing that through their own communication channels. They assisted with provision of parking spaces. The reality is that the cars initially are the biggest marketing assets. So placing the cars in highly visible locations is really key. Not right from the get-go, but over time, they made some progress to have some transportation demand management policies which would support multimodal transportation, including car sharing. So think about new development coming up, and then the idea is to incentivize the developers or ask the developers to provide more bike parking spaces, improve the bus stops, eventually invest in car sharing as opposed to building more parking spaces for privately owned vehicles. And this case study has proven to be the most exciting one in the sense that the service after a few years is financially sustainable. The city has stopped using the service to the extent that they were initially. But the community usage has been high enough that we are now looking at just an expansion, like in any other municipality where the service is relatively well established, which is the fleet is going to grow organically where there are new members, where the demand is going to warrant for us to add other cars. Now looking at Squamish, which started a few years before Langford, also with 3 cars. You may start to see a pattern. They have a lot more employees that are signed up. Their usage has been lower, I would say, than Langford. COVID happened as well in between, which led to some changes in terms of transportation patterns of employees at work. They have a range for a developer to provide a significant financial contribution to help pay for the initial vehicles that we provided. They have been helping us, just like in Langford, advertise for the service. They also provided on-street parking. And similar to Langford, they have they've made some progress when it comes to TDM policies. The difference, I would say, is that we do not have the same consistent usage that we're going to see in Langford. And so the service is not financially viable at the moment, and the vehicles are not self-sustaining. The district's TDM measures are really helping us in terms of growth, sustain that growth, accelerated growth. What really missing in Squamish is an anchor user, like a large entity, whether public, private, that is going to provide a steady baseline of utilization, which is going to help us focus on other activities such as promotion. And then I'll conclude really quickly with Central Saanich, which is the most rural of the three municipalities. It has a few small town centers that is slowly developing with more MURBs, but relatively spread out in terms of population density. We also started with 3 vehicles in 2019. We're now down to 2. The municipality has been steadily using the vehicles. They only have 31 employees, but they've really integrating the use of the service in their operations compared to the 2 other municipalities, which I've presently spoke about. They have an ongoing guaranteed minimum revenue agreement with us. And when it comes to promotion, TDM measures, and parking spaces, this is quite similar to Langford and Squamish. And the result is that now 7 years into operations, the district's role as an anchor user remains essential to maintain financial sustainability. Growth is relatively slow in this area, and as they're adding density, we're seeing some increase, but it's not happening necessarily as rapidly as everyone would like. I will end here, and Sandra, you wanna? Okay. So you may have seen some themes in the 3 case studies when it comes to what the municipalities have done or are doing to help support operations. Really, the most important one is the political buy-in, I would say. It's usually an investment for the long term. If you want car sharing to be established in a small municipality where you don't have a lot of density, you need to be ready to look at more than just the first few years of operation to have something that is going to be walking on its own. And it means having a vision for the long term that is going to be consistent. What do we want in terms of mode share? Do we want more people to be walking, using public transit and cycling? If that's the case, having car sharing is a good way to reinforce that type of behavior. As we know, and Sandra didn't necessarily explain this, folks who car share tend to predominantly walk, cycle, take public transit, and they're going to choose driving more strategically because now every time they drive, there is a cost associated to it, a high variable cost as opposed to some folks who own a car. So municipality aligned, their willingness to participate, whether it's by using the service, providing access to good parking spots, and or having TDM measures that are going to support the service. Ideally, all 3 of them, but each case is going to be different. And so it has to be considered, I would say, on a case-by-case basis. Okay. if you have any questions, I would be happy to answer.
That's great. Thanks so much for the presentation. And I do see some lights on. So first we'll go to Mayor Wells.
Thank you very much, Chair. Appreciate it, and really enjoyed the presentation. Definitely known about Moto for quite a while. I've helped. I noticed there was a few customers from the Comox Valley. I used to own a tech company and have to help people actually set up their accounts because it's all geeky and online and stuff. And I know at the city of Courtenay, where I'm an alternate director, but I do wear the hat of mayor over there. And at the city, it's definitely something that we've been very interested in a car share of some sort, for sure. So definitely good to get some knowledge on the different types and again, knowing some of the brands, but not actually being able to use them on a regular basis unless we're in Vancouver or something. I do have a very technical question though. Repeatedly, I saw the term TPM. TDM.
What does it mean?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. I will try to explain simply. It means transport demand management. And the idea is to, usually the word TDM is used in the context of a TDM program. So it's a program where a series of measures are going to be used in order to have people move more effectively and make better use of the transit network, avoiding everybody to be alone in their car at the same time, right? That would be the worst. And municipalities are looking at various solutions, tactics that they can use to have people move more sustainably from an environmental standpoint, more safely, more economically. And so car sharing is just a tool in the TDM toolbox,
Okay.
right? Building cycling infrastructure, it could be another TDM measure.
Excellent. All right. Thanks so much for that great explanation. Much appreciated.
Also representing the city of Courtenay, Director McCollum.
Thanks, Chair. And thanks for coming today and speaking to us on this. I'm very excited by the idea. I've had a number of community members over the time I've been on council ask me what it would take. And I have actually reached out to Moto, I think in last term, probably more than 4 years ago, just inquiring about what the process would be. But at the time, it looked like it really needed a community organizer to go around and find that kind of anchor membership, as opposed to what you presented today around maybe finding something that's a little more corporate to get that base started. But I think that's basically what I heard previously and thought I don't have the bandwidth for that. So yeah, this seems like a good alternative. I think in that time as well that our community has really developed a lot of these other attributes that are necessary for this type of car share to be successful. We've made great strides in our cycling network in the last 8 years in the city of Courtenay and added a lot of density. One thing I wanted to point out is that although we are a fairly small community with a small transit system, our metrics around ridership, we have our manager of that service here tonight, so maybe he could chime in, but it's my understanding we're like well above the average for communities of our size that have transit. So I do wonder if that would lead to a little bit better usage than like a comparable community like Squamish that doesn't quite have that level of uptake in the public transit system. Something that I've heard many times when people have brought up how great it would be to have car share in the city is actually going from the one car or going from 2 cars to 1 car family. And we've done a lot to limit or to reduce the requirements around parking. And it's getting harder with the way that we're doing development to even store 2 cars. So there's, additional factors as to why people may not want to do that aside from the expense of maintaining 2 cars. So you did highlight that if people are more on their bikes and on the bus, that they're more likely to use car share. But do you have any comments around just that reduction of yeah, going from 2 cars to 1 and, whether or not that kind of transition also has led to more usage in other communities.
Yes, we don't necessarily have very granular data as to where we have more or less members that are that live in a household with only 1 car as opposed to 0. But the reality is that unless you live in a really dense urban area, most people will need to own a car. And what we're hoping when we're looking at smaller communities is to play the role of that second car. So what you're indicating in terms of trend is consistent with what we're seeing in other places, and what we're hearing from members is that, we're not going to replace that second car when it's time to replace it, end of the lease, whatever major repair. Instead, maybe we're going to buy a bike, an electric bike or a cargo bike, and then we'll car share in addition to that. To come back to your first point about ridership, transit ridership, one of the things that we really try to do when we're looking at vehicle planning and expansion is understanding how people move currently that is not with a car. Like folks that are living in the community where they're able to walk their kids to school, where they're able to walk to the supermarket, are they able to walk to a bus stop, or do they have to drive to the bus stop, or whatever it is, right? So if you're thinking about feasibility, there are a few indicators like this that are good to have, understanding where there's more ridership, where there is more already walking, cycling in a community, because that can already indicate where folks are going to be more likely to be interested in a service like car sharing.
Yeah, that makes sense. I had a follow-up too, but I can't remember what it was, so I'll get back in the lineup.
All right.
Thanks.
All right, Mayor Director Brown.
Thanks. I'm a director here, but I am also from the village of Cumberland, which has the highest number of cars per household. Sorry, thanks for calling us out on that. Partly that's because we don't have a full-size grocery store in the village, so people are dependent on that and driving to that because our transit service also is not where we'd love it to be. So I guess I have a couple of questions. One is around youth use of cars, because what we see in Cumberland is the parents may have each a car, and then they have teenagers in the house who then need their own car. So right now, my household actually has 3 vehicles, which is just horrifying. And but there's no way for any of us to. Anyway, that's a complicated answer. So is there a age limit to participating?
18.
18,
You
okay.
can have,
And you have to have a clean driver's record at that age probably as well?
yes. We could share some information as to what the requirements are. What I would want to highlight is that you can actually learn how to drive with Moto. So your L, you can do it in a motor car. You just need a primary member to be a full member with a license, and then the learner driver is an additional driver on your Moto account.
Yeah.
And we thought that it would make it would make no sense to force people to buy a car to teach their kids how to drive if they want them to car share, or if they're already car sharing as a household. So yeah, the idea is to make it easier for as many people as possible to use our service, including young drivers.
Okay, that's great. And we've done a lot of the things in the village as well to try and shift car usage. So that's in place, including allowing developers to have a car share instead of parking, which is new. So we've got no pickup on that, obviously, at this point. But I'm curious, so I guess I'm wondering how it structurally works. So the municipality has to purchase the vehicles and you provide the service, is that it? And could that be done by a region as a collection of municipalities?
So I wouldn't want to simplify to that. Who buys the car is less important than who is going to use the car.
Right.
And as you may have seen as an underlying message in the 3 case studies, municipalities were more or less using the service. Some were using it upfront for initial period of time. Others have been using it throughout. Some started to use it and then it dropped. And so that's a common theme, really, in small communities. We need to have a baseline of usage from the get-go if we want to be able to sustain our efforts and provide a service and guarantee
Yeah.
the service for an extended period of time in order to attract enough people from the community for them to then drive enough, pun intended,
Yeah.
drive enough so that the service is financially sustainable without the usage from the anchor tenant. And if they want to anchor tenant or user, and if they want to exit, they can, and the service will continue. So it's just not as easy as putting a certain amount of money on the table and us buying a car and operating. I wish it could be as simple,
Yeah.
but really we're looking at being able to sustain operations and allowing the service to grow, sometimes slowly, sometimes faster, and that is going to be hard to predict.
Yeah.
Langford, it grew way faster than we anticipated, and by contrast, Squamish maybe not as rapidly as we would have hoped and the district would have hoped, and so we need to be ready for that and not pull the plug. You know, these people, now we have a lot of people depending on service, we want to be able to sustain that as long as possible.
Great. And just before we go to the next question, one for myself, would you say that most of your users use the cars for local trips, or would they be, I guess if we use the Comox Valley example, would they be for people that are going to Victoria for the weekend or for the day, or to Nanaimo for the day? What percentage are local trips versus kind of further afoot? Thanks.
Most trips or less than 6 hours. It's going to, cars can be booked for as little as 30 minutes or 30 minutes. Very few people will book a car for 30 minutes. But the most common use case is going to be between 3 and 6, I would say, is going to be, as Sandra said earlier, people are going to combine a few errands, maybe dropping the kids at hockey or soccer and then going grocery shopping, picking up the kids back, going to a play date, and then home. And we also see a lot of people who are going to book the car for the day to go on a hike, whatever, adventure, friends, anything. And then cars can be booked for up to 3 weeks. And so if you're thinking about how members choose to get around during the summer, rental vehicles become really expensive. We have a lot of minivans and SUVs in the fleet, and a lot of members are going to use us instead of a rental agency to use a car for their road trip for a week or whatever period of time.
Okay, that's great. Most are 3 to 6 hours range.
Yeah,
That's
if you're
perfect.
looking in terms of the most common use case, yes.
Thank you. Okay, next question, Director Morin.
Thanks. I think both of my questions have been answered because that was, one of my questions was around the types of trips that are the most prevalent. And you brought up the variety of trips that people use them for. And you've also touched on the piece around the development community car share. I don't know if there's much more that you can say about that, but I know that we have had a couple development applications where they have mentioned car share in the applications, but of course we haven't had any. So can you just flesh out a little bit more how that works? I would assume
Sure.
somewhere like Langford has a lot of multifamily.
Yep.
We have a lot of multifamily residences in Courtney where it would make a lot of sense, I think.
Yeah, so Moto has been working with developers for 2 decades, starting in Vancouver, where the landscape is really different. I will highlight a few things. Starting car sharing through development projects is really risky because you risk designing the service, first, not having a lot of control on how the service is being designed. If you put that control in the hands of a developer. One of the items that Sandra highlighted when we're looking at small municipalities is the shared understanding that car sharing is a community amenity. And if it's part of a development, the developers tend to want to make this just a resident amenity. And so you're excluding possibly right from the onset a lot of people. And so you're losing that community benefit and the broader impacts that it can bring. So that's the first kind of risk. The second risk is that you can miss the bigger picture, right? And the developer may be interested in a parking variance, and they may have requirement to provide the service for 3 years. And so they're willing to look at some cost to run this for 3 years, and after they pull the plug.
Right.
And what have you won as a municipality? What have the residents won? Not so much, right? So I think that it's interesting to think about the role that the developers can play, but more as kind of side players as opposed to the main player
Yeah.
and the driver of the initiative. So if you need something, whether it's space, dollars, visibility, how can they help with that? But our experience is that the municipality should really be the entity which is going to design what they want the service to look like. And then they're going to have a very specific request for the developer, as opposed to letting them decide what the car sharing should be in the community. Most municipalities that we're working with, and I will not say all because there are always edge cases, when they're asking developers to provide car sharing, they do not want the car share service to be just for the residents. They want the car share vehicles in the building to be available as part of a network that is available to anyone part of that car share organization, right? So if it's Moto, then the car has to be available to all Moto members.
Right. Thank you for that.
Director Arbor.
Yeah, thanks. I'll bring a bit of a rural flavor to this one, which is I'm curious about your experience or others' experiences, because for me, as I look outside that window, half of the vehicles are trucks. And in rural areas, I was one of them for 20 years. I had a truck, and I use a truck about 10% of the time for the purpose of a truck. The rest of the time, I just this typical guy going around the community with an empty truck, spewing out gas and, just looking cool. And I'm just thinking in rural areas, there's a huge opportunity, I think, but I've never seen a model where trucks are actually actively promoted. Guys are lazy too. Like they won't come to a program unless it's heavily. So I'm just wondering, like even the regional district, like additional values, if we were an anchor tenant, provided some of our vehicles or fleet vehicles to the residents or to others that are electric, get people an experience to get into that. Like there might be other objectives that we could. So I'm just wondering if Moto has experience in the truck business.
So short answer, yes. We do have trucks in our fleet. They tend to be smaller than the trucks that we see out there. F-150 is too big for Vancouver, I will say, especially if you don't. It's too small for here. So maybe we can find a compromise. But what our members like is fleet diversity. And thank you for bringing that perspective, because for the households who do only own one vehicle, the question or the debate that is going to happen is, do we keep the big car or the small car? And I don't know if any of you had that conversation exactly. Or sometimes it's not necessarily a small car. Do we keep the SUV or do we keep the truck? What we want to do at Moto is help people always get the right car for the trip. And while we recognize that for a lot of people, the truck is going to be only needed, twice a year, there are a lot of families for whom the truck is needed more often because they work in construction or they do a hobby that requires hauling, carrying a bunch of stuff, whatever it is. But when they need the second car for the occasional trip, it may not need more than a small hatchback to go grocery shopping. And so the question is, do we want to rent a big truck that is going to cost us more than a small little car? And so we can provide options, and then people decide based on how much they're willing to spend and the type of vehicle really that they need for that particular trip. Would be happy if more truck owners were willing to sell their trucks and share their truck. We can do that. We have no issue with that. You made a second point about the district or government entity making their vehicles available. We didn't bring as a use case the city of Kelowna, but the city of Kelowna, when they were approached by a small grassroots organization many years ago, which was called Ogo Car Share, they were approached, and the small car share co-op asked if they would be willing to actually transfer some of their underutilized vehicles into the car share program, make them available to the members of the co-op, and at the same time become a member of the car share co-op. And the municipality said, yes, let's go. They were not trucks, but that really helped this small organization get a fleet for very small price tag. But more importantly, what the municipality did is they said, we're going to walk the talk. And they really normalize the use of car share. And if you're thinking about convincing folks that are maybe resistant to the idea of moving around differently, being exposed to that at work is a really good way to normalize it. And then people can decide if they want to adopt it at home, whether they're driving a truck during the day or a small car, doesn't really matter. Just the notion of sharing an asset effectively has a lot of perks for employees. You're not wondering when your colleague is going to come back. There's no key exchange. And a lot of employees have really enjoyed that way of sharing cars. And then after that, it can spread through the community.
Great. Director McCollum.
Thanks again. Yeah, I think you've actually answered part of my question, and that was just around this whole like anchor partner or anchor organization to provide that basis for that initial expansion. And so in the communities where it's gone that way, I guess the idea is for the municipality that there's the necessity of a couple fewer fleet vehicles. Is that like Modo has then like provided those new car shares at that site that's available to the whole community, but also to the municipality, assuming it's a
Correct.
municipality.
Correct. And Moto members can book cars up to a year in advance. So if you're a municipality and you know that you have ongoing needs, or if you're a business, because Sandra said we have 1,000 organizations that are using a service, some do have very significant needs, and so they're going to book the cars like every work day, and they know that the car is going to be, or the cars are going to be there for them. And then outside of these hours, vehicles are available, and they may be booked more on a kind of last minute basis by the general public, where it makes the most sense for a municipal government or an organization generally when they want to support car share is when they actually have a need to drive, and they can look at their own fleet, ask themselves, are the vehicles that we have in our fleet well used? What could we do to use them better? Do we have an opportunity to right size that fleet? Because right now we're using just a Google Calendar or whatever Outlook calendar, and people maybe are booking the car for half a day when in fact they only need it for 3 hours. Car sharing allows you to really optimize vehicle utilization. And so we've seen with large municipalities, but also smaller ones, the ability to have a smaller fleet cover the same needs by using car sharing as an additional tool, right? And most of the day, they'll only need 1 or 2 cars, but there'll be these times where there's a special project or something happening where they're going to need more cars, and they don't need to buy an additional car just for that peak period. They can just access whatever motor vehicles are available. So it provides this flexibility as well. But having that real need in the first place really just allows for the business case to be much stronger than creating that need that doesn't exist.
Yeah, that makes good sense. So in terms of next steps then, like what would, I mean, we're having this like informational talk, and I mean, there's obviously been some interest even prior to today. So what, like, how does the discussion or that process move forward from the information point?
Usually looking at a high level, making sure that in terms of policies, the directions that the municipality wants to go, that car sharing can be a good fit, right? And then if looking at the policies, if it's a good fit because there is a desire to change the, you know, the way that people are moving. I know that in the regional district, there is a desire to move people away from driving their own cars toward more sustainable modes of transportation. Car sharing can play a role along with other emerging modes or shared modes. So if there's a good policy alignment, then it's about looking kind of more into more granular aspects operationally. How could we do this? Who would be, if any, who would be an anchor user of the service? And then looking at how many vehicles, where would they make most sense to serve the need of this anchor user along with the needs of the community? Is there a location or some locations that would allow to serve as many people as possible? Something that we didn't necessarily indicate, but when you're thinking about bus ridership, we know that most folks will be willing to walk about 5 minutes to a bus stop, right? And that's about the same for a shared vehicle. So you can think about already, okay, we have a 400 or 500 meter radius within which most people should be willing to walk to that shared vehicle or that bus stop. Do we have areas where we can serve a good amount of people who are already walking, taking public transit, cycling, because they have access to amenities or because of the type of housing that they have. And then ideally it's close to the anchor user or employees of the anchor user. So high level and then down to the very practical operational aspects.
Makes sense.
Great. Thank you. And thank you, Sandra and Sylvain, for coming tonight and, responding to the board's request that you present some information, also for answering a record number of questions. Really do appreciate it and look forward to having these discussions going forward.
Thank you for the
Thank you.
invitation.
Great. All right. So moving along into section F of the agenda, reports. We have a report from Evolve, micro mobility program, and report dated March 10th. If I could have, thank you very much, and hand things over to Mike Zawarski.
Can't wait. Thank you through the CEO and the board chair to the rest of the board. So we have a quick 1 or 2 page staff report here, a quick verbal overview, and then we'll hand it off to Leanne Jeweler with BCA's Evolve team. So this initiative came about out of the Comox Valley Mobility Primer back in 2022. We worked with the member municipalities and BCA at that time to develop this pilot program. There's an MOU with the CVRD and the member municipalities, and then there's a license and services agreement between CVRD and BCA to kind of formalize this arrangement. Both of those are up for renewal at the end of April. They have renewal clauses included in them, currently 3 one-year renewal terms. And I'm going to pass it on to Leanne now, actually, who's going to talk about the highlights from last year as well as the plan for moving forward. And then we'll both be available for questions after.
Great. Welcome, Leanne.
Hello, thank you. My name is Leanne Bueller. I'm the head of Evolve e-bike and e-scooter share. You're normally met with my colleague David Holzer, but we're tag teaming because he's presenting at the Courtney Council meeting next week. First of all, thanks very much for having me here tonight, but also for inviting Evolve e-bike and e-scooter share into the community over the last couple of years. Today, I've got about 10 minutes to give you an overview of how it's been going, as well as share a bit of our ambitions for 2026 and beyond. And give you a bit of a flavor of what's been happening with the program. You see the bikes and scooters on the road, you see some people riding them, but what you might not see is some of the inner workings and some of the impact that we've been having on the community. So the way I've got this structured, I've got a little bit of the data and the stats coming out of the program, but I'm mostly focusing on a couple of case studies of that sort of inner workings behind the scenes impact that we've been having on the region. I'm going to start with a bit of a refresher about who we are. So you may or may not know, Evolve e-bike and e-scooter share is owned and operated by BCAA, the British Columbia Automobile Association. We are a member-based not-for-profit organization operating shared micromobility under Evolve, which gives us a really interesting way to do business within British Columbia. We have a mandate to serve our members, and as an organization of 120 years old, that means that we have to, and excuse the pun, evolve with the times and the needs of our communities across British Columbia. And really our mandate today is to transform everyday movement through communities. And CVRD is a great example of how that's happening. I want to just touch on before I get into the data about why CVRD is a really important region for us. For those of you who aren't in the weeds of shared mobility all of the time, like I am, and like Sandra and Sylvan are, regional connectivity and regional coordination is maybe one of the hottest topics in shared mobility. Making sure that people who are moving from one part of the region to another part of the region have a consistent service and have a consistent provider so they don't have 14 different apps and all these different ways of trying to move around. The Comox Valley is a really good example of how we're already doing that. There's a lot of regions that are asking this question, but you're already doing it. And that's through this regional coordination and the support of the CVRD to have a vision and to bring that vision to life in having e-bike share in Courtney, Cumberland, Comox. Pardon me. A little bit of the data behind what's been going on. So we've got 30 stations that we were operating with last year, 50 e-bikes, and then we introduced e-scooters midway through the year, and we've got 75 e-scooters deployed. Year to date, or program to date, I should say, we've just about hit a 10,000 mark milestone, so we're a couple hundred off of the 10,000 trip milestone. In terms of unique riders, 3,200 unique riders. It's a lot of people that are using the system in a population density size as this one. And the trip the trip profile is about 2.5 or 2.8 kilometers and 13 minutes, which is a super average size trip for shared micromobility. So we're right in that sort of sweet spot of what we want to see. Moving on to a little bit of the case study and some of the things that you may not be as aware about. When we launched Evolve here and started working with the CVRD, we were really on a mission to support the active and sustainable transportation movement here. We're in a point in the Comox Valley where congestion isn't as big an issue as some larger cities relatively. And that means that there's a really good opportunity to come in now and expose people to the idea of shared micromobility and help create the behaviors that are going to eventually, support less congestion as the city continues to grow. And so to do that, and some of the results that we've been seeing so far is we've seen a lot of repeat users. So we have a monthly subscription plan. We've got 126 people in the region subscribed. So those are people that are using the service over and over and over. We introduced e-scooters, which my last bullet point has driven ridership by 160%. It's more accessible. It meets the needs of different types of riders and arguably maybe more fun. And we expanded to Cumberland last year, which was a really great expansion to continue this sort of regional connectivity of shared micromobility. We are having great results from our riders. We're hearing really positive attributes. 86% of the folks that responded to our survey, there's almost 200 respondents, so a really good survey size, agreed that Evolve added value to the overall transportation system. That number was 92% in the age demographic of 18 to 34. So that maybe reflects a need in different kinds of age categories and different demographics. 59% that it reduced the use of their personal vehicle to commute. So as we're thinking about, shared cars and thinking about changing behaviors, this really gives people an alternate opportunity to get around the region. And 21% of riders use it to connect to transit, which is exactly the behavior that we like to see. And I've got a bit of a quote, a verbatim quote from one of the survey respondents talking about how they're carless. They need to get around when bus frequency is lower or non-existent. And e-bike share and e-scooter share has been instrumental in their ability to get around the region. Safety is always one of the largest topics that comes out of shared micromobility. When we launched Evolve under the BCAA brand, which is a road safety organization at heart, one of the things that we decided is that we wanted to be proactive in this movement. Micromobility, e-bikes, e-scooters are happening regardless of having a shared system on the road. And BCAA taking a proactive stance in that and bringing the safety element to communities is a way that we're really enhancing this change and this transition to smaller electric vehicles. Some of the ways that we do that with the shared system is we can speed limit. So none of the devices go faster than 25 kilometers an hour. We set low and no ride zones in communities where there might be high interactions with pedestrians or other cyclists or road users. We have deckling of safety instructions, of the rules, of the laws all over our bikes and signage. So we're helping to provide an educational aspect to riders. And then beyond that, we're doing a ton in the community, which is kind of my last slide there. But just really bringing the education and the awareness of how to use these devices in a community to not just our riders, but also to the general public in all of the events and activations that we do throughout the year. One highlight to share is that this year we'll be running an e-scooter safety tour to give new riders some exposure and demonstration and hands-on experience of riding an e-scooter, gives them confidence and just that ability to try before they get on for a real trip. Same with the prior topic, we've got really good response rates and really good feedback from community members. 83% are satisfied with the condition of the devices. That's also part of our vendor here, Amped Rides in Comox, doing an excellent job in repairing and maintaining the devices so that they're always ready for a user. And then 76 reported always wearing a helmet for every ride, and another 11% reported wearing a helmet for some rides, which anecdotally in some of the written feedback was more a case of they were using a protected lane or a bike path that, they made that decision themselves. The final sort of case study is about what we're doing to make this program aware to community members and residents. You can't just put these services on the ground and expect people to use them. And I think Sylvan and Sandra did a really good job in sort of explaining that it takes time for people to adopt these different devices and adopt shared mobility. And so it takes a lot of intention and it takes a lot of investment as well from our side to make sure people know what we are, who we are, that there's different use cases for shared micromobility. And a couple of things that we've been doing is just sort of monitoring how people are finding about us, what they're using us for, so that we can better curate and better address people's needs and give them inspiration for how else they can use shared micromobility. So a couple of results from our survey: 77% discovered it just by seeing them on the ground, which is pretty typical for these kinds of systems. 61% said they were just curious and wanted to try it. And oftentimes that's the hook. You get people on an e-bike or e-scooter a couple of times, and then they're starting to think about it. They've got the confidence, they've got the app downloaded, and then they're going to start thinking about it for their like everyday commutes and other kinds of transportation use cases. So we have, over the last couple of years, had really strong community acceptance and a brand impact, with Evolve e-bikes and e-scooters being well recognized in the community, well received. We also have put quite a bit of investment into paid media just to make sure that people are aware of the program. Those are digital ads, those are the billboard that was available in town at the Marine Center. And we had over 1 million impressions, which is a really great number for the amount of advertising that we paid for in the community. So people are seeing us, people know who we are. That's a really important part in long-term adoption of the program. We also attended 6 events in the community. We were at Nautical Days, we did the parade, we did a launch event in Cumberland, we were at the farmers market, and this is where we're sort of perpetuating those safety messages. All of our booth is about safety, learning the rules of the road. We talk to a lot of riders, but we also talk to just a lot of the general public. And this is where a lot of our safety messaging continues to perpetrate within our ecosystem. Last but not least, what are we looking at ahead of in 2026? As I mentioned, we're safety and awareness and education is a big part of it. But going back to the top, really refining and expanding our parking zones. So I think there's 9 different additional parking zones that we're working on launching for the 2026 season. And we're also working in partnership with BC Transit. And we just signed a letter of intent to work with BC Transit to cross-promote transit services with micromobility services, as well as work with them to physically locate shared micromobility with the transit hubs to make that connection easier and quicker, and really help build that, that culture of using shared and public transportation together. The final one is our inclusive mobility program. This is our program and pricing that's directed at equity deserving individuals. Thanks, we'll just move that over. The rate that we're offering is 10 cents per minute, which is comparison to our 35 cents per minute, which is our regular posted rate. And the way that we deliver this is through community-based organizations. So we've had initial conversations with the CVRD and with the communities to talk about aligning on what the goals would be of this program this year, with the intent to roll out and have people onboarded on this program by the end of the year. And really our goal is to obviously deliver affordable rates to those who need it, but really start to track and understand qualitatively and quantitatively how micromobility serves different kinds of use cases and different kinds of demographics, and really start building that relationship so that we can connect to those members and understand what other needs they might have from an equity deserving lens. And so I have lots of additional stats if you're curious about digging into anything, but that's what I've got for sort of my formal presentation here. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Leanne, and thank you so much for working with our Nautical Days Committee and Comox and getting so many people down to the festival and the other events as well. We'll see Mayor Wells is up next.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I was at Nautical Days, and it was a lot of fun. I think we were the first sort of contraband scooters running around on the streets there. So it was a lot of good fun. And, over the years, I've been able to talk with Curtis at AMPT, sent him photos of signs knocked down and bikes that need to be repaired that are beyond my capacity as a person just meandering by. But one of the questions that I have, I got sort of 2 questions. Maybe I'll do one and then jump back in the line. But really has to do with the geofencing and sort of the challenges that are sort of brought into the fact that a lot of people aren't aware how the Ministry of Transportation and Transit owns a lot of the corridors. So like a lot of Cliff Avenue, Ryan Road, the Dyke Road between 17th Street and Town of Comox, and how that impacts the ability to use the bicycles or the scooters, because scooters, I think, are technically still not allowed on Ministry of Transportation roads, and how and like what works are being done to try to make them allowed, or if that's even possible. But just how that impacts, and then there's the geofencing so that when somebody gets there, it just stops kind of thing.
Yeah, geofencing is a great technology to manage speeds in certain areas or eliminate speed entirely or stop the device so that people can't move in and out of those spaces. So I just wanted to refresh everyone on those. Yeah, I think there's a lot of work going on right now. There is a limitation currently between Cumberland and Courtney Comox with the e-scooters in particular. And so we've done our best to sort of educate riders through the use of hang tags and maps physically located on the devices so that when somebody hops on, it's not a surprise when the power cuts off as they try and ride down the road. Yeah, I think this is an ongoing challenge with shared micromobility. The province is very acutely aware. We're in close connection with the province. Both the CVRD and the municipalities have a connection to the Ministry of Transportation and Transit to both provide feedback as well as positive, and also where there's opportunities to improve. And there are some mechanisms that can be undertaken to allow for those devices on those roads. They're just a lengthy process. So good over perfection to make sure we've got some services in place right now. I think the other area that you're touching on is some of the sort of great multi-use pathways that may not have e-bike or e-scooter allowed on those areas, which we have geofenced. And those are areas that we're working with City of Courtney staff in particular to address and look for opportunities to make that a better experience for the riders. A personal rider doesn't necessarily have those restrictions, but when the shared rider gets into those spaces, it does. So I think there's a real opportunity for everybody in the community to benefit from those conversations.
Excellent. Yeah, really appreciate the answers. And my only other question was around the cars, and because we've been pushing David on that for many years, but I can bug him next week when he's at Courtney. So thanks so much.
All right, Mayor Brown.
Thanks. Two questions as well. I'm up in Cumberland, and we lost our blue bikes and scooters over the winter. I presume that's because people thought it would snow in Cumberland, because it normally does. So I would love clarification on that, whether and when we'll get them back. And then also just a note that we can also be advocating to Ministry of Transportation for that extended use, because that's going to be a huge barrier for Cumberland use, because that's where people are going to want to use them, is to come into town, into the city of Courtney, I should say. Yeah.
Yes, thank you for the offer to help us advocate. I think that's really important to have a united front and a real partnership showing up that when we're talking to the ministry. So appreciate that. On bike and scooter return, I believe in April, like it's coming up soon here. The winter seasonality isn't necessarily just snow, but just like a drop of brick, in the ridership. And it might take a couple of years to really build the ridership to justify operating over the winter. Currently, BCA is operating at a loss over the winter months in this region. But we do believe in the system, and we do believe that there is a need for a system like this in smaller centers. So now the conversation can move from do we have this to yes, people need this service, and people rely on this in the winter as well. It's not just a summertime transportation option. So how do we fill the gap, and how do we find ways to operate the system more sustainably, especially in the winter months?
Okay, so can I have a follow-up? Sorry. There was a reduction in the bikes throughout the region, but Cumberland was just pulled because we're a low rider. We're new to the service, or like, why did some areas get to keep their bikes and
yeah, the original understanding is we would launch in Cumberland as a pilot for the summer season, see how it went, and then we can assess going forward.
Okay.
But winter seasonality and winter reductions is still a conversation that's ongoing for the whole region, not just Cumberland.
Yeah. I just feel like we lost a bit of momentum.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And Mayor Brown, Cumberland residents are welcome to come all the way to the town of Comox at any point, Yes. We're just a few minutes past. All right, Director McCollum, next question.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks for the presentation. It's great to see this program expanding and being more well used and relied on. I thought there was some good numbers in the survey results that you shared. I had actually just one question following up on the comment and question that Director Brown asked. Is it just the scooters that are geo fenced? I don't know if that's the right word. And you can still take, well, once the like winter kind of limited is over, that you can ride an evolved bike from Courtney to Cumberland and vice versa. It's just not the scooters, right?
Correct, yeah.
Okay, I wasn't sure. Yeah, so my question was really around where the usage hotspots are. Like I'm really curious about like, I mean, since last year, there was additional parking spots provided. I think it's been flagged a few times that like superstore area would be really great to have a better parking area. I think I've noticed that maybe there's one beside a trail kind of nearby there, but it's not visible, and I'm not even sure if it's a formal parking spot. There's no sign for it. So yeah, just I thought we might see some of that kind of more granular information tonight, and if there's anything that you can share off the top of your head, and if there's a way for us to get that data, I think it's helpful for decision making around where we do more support for services like this.
You bet. So pardon me, I can give you a couple of the ideas where hotspots are, but I also want to acknowledge that we had a detailed report that your staff has, and you also have access, all three municipalities have access to a dashboard called Populous, which has heat maps and detailed information at your fingertips anytime. So that's totally available. There's no secrecy around that. It's for cities to assess, to understand the usage, and to incorporate into long-term strategic planning, which is good for both of us. So that's definitely available to you at at your fingertips. A couple of the hotspots that we had: Hawkins Road, Comox Ave, Riverway, 5th and 17th Bridge, Guthrie Road were some of the locations that came out as hotspots or top locations. And some of the areas of expansion that we're focused on this year, in those sort of 9 zones that I talked about that we were expanding to, are transit hubs and getting into more of the residential areas. We actually feel like we've got a really good distribution of zones in the commercial areas of all 3 areas. What we'd like to see more is connecting people where they live with where they want to go and work. So that's really the focus of our next tranche of expansion. Yeah. And I do encourage you to look at the dashboard too. Yeah. Yeah.
Leanne, just a quick follow-up on that. Of the 126 monthly subscribers, how many of those would be daily, commuters to work or school?
Yeah, so they're about a little over half of the riders are riding one way, which is a good indicator of that sort of commute pattern. Of the 126, I don't have that data in front of me directly, but that it wouldn't make sense for somebody to be on that monthly subscription program if they weren't taking the devices 1, 2, 3 times a week in every week for the month. So those are typically very much commuter use cases. The thing with the mobility plan is you can opt in and you can unsubscribe, month over month. So a lot of times if people have, especially like during a school year, we're hoping that's a really great tool for North Island College and North Island College students to take their frequent trips. And then, when the off season or maybe their shifts change, they don't need the subscription plan any longer. So we see a lot of like hop on and hop off of the subscription plan throughout the year as well.
Right. Thank you. Just curious, if we knew, let's say there's 20 or 50 people that said, okay, this is gonna be my way to work or my way to school and back. Be curious to know those numbers of like, 10 uses a week, 5, times 2. That'd be kind of interesting to know, and how that evolves over time.
Yeah, we'd be happy to provide that to city staff. Yeah.
Thank you. Great. Director Arbor.
Yeah, thanks. I'll bring a rural voice to the table. This conversation reminds me of a bunch of stuff, but often how we're the third poor cousin in the whole equation. I think you started your presentation by saying that we have a regional approach and that you can highlight that to other regions. We don't have a regional approach here. We have a municipal approach. There's not a single bike in the rural areas. So I challenge you, because we're often beggars in our own house as rural directors. I challenge you to consider Royston. Maybe we'll take half a broken bike, and see. I'm sure the Roystoners will probably blow all the stats downtown out of the water if you give us half a broken bike. It'll get a lot of use, and also and a bigger challenge.
I could just speak to that piece.
I'm not quite done.
Yeah, we did try to locate some parking stations in the electoral areas, but the Ministry of Transportation and Transit has been challenging to get those approvals.
So
Big surprise.
So while you're at the mic, look on where the bike actually sits or on the usage on the road.
Where the bike parking station sits.
Okay, so Royston Hall would be happy to provide some spots, and that's a nonprofit. I mean, think outside the box. When you come to solving problems and providing service in rural areas, I'm actually not joking. The other part that's a bigger challenge, which is also, I think, would be interesting for your team to maybe just have 2 minutes to think about, is your fee structure is not super conducive fully to the rural areas because it starts to get expensive. But I'm wondering, one of the biggest issue we have in Hornby and Denman is summer's ferry traffic. And I'm wondering if a day rate on bikes parked at Buckley Bay to go over to the islands and for people to save 3 hours sitting in their car to try to get to Hornby. I'm wondering if there's a pilot project there sometime in the future. So I'd ask for half a broken bike at the Royston Hall and maybe consideration of the whole scene around the ferries for Hornby and Denman. That we already see a lot of bikers that do that trip, and a lot of cars, a lot of people arrive at Buckley Bay, then they're facing a super long lineup. So yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Thank you. We will take that into consideration, and we'll continue working with Royston on locations. Yeah, appreciate that.
Great, thanks. Back to Director McCollum.
Yeah, thanks. It's more of a process question. I do have a few questions more related to the staff report, and I'm just curious, are we going to revert back to that? I just want to know when I should ask those questions.
Sure. Yeah, we can do that right afterwards. Yep.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions for Leanne? Okay. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. I guess we'll invite Mike back up, and Director McCollum, if you wanted to ask that question about the staff report, we could do that before we dispense with receipt.
Thank you. Yeah, just looking at the details in the report, I just had some questions about some of the information provided in the executive summary. One of my questions was the first bullet says that exclusive rights to BCAA to operate the shared micromobility program throughout the Comox Valley. I didn't see that in the MOU, and then the license and service agreement isn't attached. So is there currently an exclusive right, and are we proposing to extend that for 3 years?
Yeah, so you're correct. In the license and service agreement, which is between CVRD and BCA, so it's kind of a detailed contract that we didn't want to include in the staff report. But these are the highlights of it, and it does include a provision for exclusive rights to BCA to operate the shared micromobility program throughout the Comox Valley. So as it stands now, if we were to renew the contract as is, it would continue to have that exclusivity. And if there's any interest to look at a different way of doing that, we'd have to obviously negotiate that with BCAA.
Yeah, I mean, I don't expect, or I don't see a real need to have more than one, but I also question why we would create that privilege. And then I also wonder if the CVRD has the authority to make that commitment, given that the municipalities all have separate agreements in terms of licensing and whatnot. So that's my follow-up, if that's in fact the case. And this is a huge hypothetical, but if another provider that was doing something that is defined as micromobility came to the city of Courtenay and wanted to present that, is there anything that would prevent that from happening? Or like, I'm trying to understand how, because the licensing and servicing agreement is just with the CVRD, and then we have our own contract with BCAA, like we being the city of Courtenay, obviously.
Yeah, so I'm not privy to what's in the city's agreement with BCAA, but this was a clause that was negotiated between CBRD and BCAA. Comox and Cumberland do not have separate agreements, so they'd be kind of, they'd be within our, I guess, within our agreement with BCAA through the MOU. And I can't really speak to the legalities of providing another service provider with an opportunity to serve the community. I don't know if you have anything to say about that, Leanne, but that if maybe if you could come up and share some kind of perspective and background, that'd be helpful.
Just a bit of context on the industry as a whole. So when we launch in municipalities or when we're putting in a proposal for launching these systems, they require a pretty substantial upfront investment to put the infrastructure, to market, to have the staffing in place. So typically with micromobility systems across BC, they're an exclusive right for some period of time for the company like ourselves to establish a base here and try and realize some of those initial investments. So that's a really common practice in shared micromobility. And oftentimes there's very few municipalities that can support multiple operators to be financially sustainable. So that's a bit of the background. It's not unusual, and many of the contracts we have do have exclusivity.
Okay, yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem that far, like, I mean, it does make sense. I can see that for sure the first year you're operating at a loss when you're trying to get it up and going. So it's not like I'm pointing out that it seems like egregious. I just don't remember seeing it when we first talked about it, and just the complexity of this additional layer of, we're working with BCAA at a regional level, but then like the city is doing, like you said, BCAA is coming next week's council meeting to have, a similar discussion. So I'm just trying to understand how those two things fit together. And then the other question I have, which I'm not sure which one of you will want to answer it, but shared responsibility for marketing and promotion. I mean, you highlighted how much marketing, and I've seen it in my social media apps that it was very well promoted, especially at the launch, but I didn't realize that we were doing some kind of shared commitment to promoting the service. So, and what that would look like going forward in a 3-year contract.
Yeah, I think initially we did have a little bit more marketing and communications effort at the local government level. And, over the past year, I think BCA's really stepped up their game, and it's meant that we don't really need to do much to promote it. They're way better at promoting than we would be probably. And we might, as these services kind of grow, we might kind of step in and out of that communication and education sphere, depending on what the need is. So I think it is a shared responsibility, but we won't always be doing much at the CBRD level, and we'll rely heavily on BCA to take the lead on that.
So shared, but maybe not equally.
I'll just add maybe a bit of information too. None of the paid media is being paid or cost any of the regional governments. That is all of BC. The type of shared promotion is like using city channels to promote the service, having it on the website as an option for people. That's the kind of promotion that we have worked with the cities and the regional governments on. So it's not like the city is paying for your Instagram ads.
Yeah. No, I didn't think so.
I'll just give a highlight of some promotions coming up with our new transit exchanges. We have Evolve bike stations at those locations, and we've got some kind of branding with the Evolve, BC Transit, CBRD all on one advertisement. So we are getting back into the game, maybe not quite equal, but I'm doing a little bit more.
Not to mention Director Grant and I and the rest of Comox Council are riding the e-scooters in the Nautical Days Parade, which I'm sure you all witnessed, but that kind of shared promotion. Oh, and yes, Mayor Wells was there. Thank you. I forgot. Almost ran into him. All right. Any other questions for Mike or Leanne here? Great. Thank you so much. And we will dispense with receipt from this report. Anyone opposed to receipt? Right, motion carries. There's a recommendation to renew the 3-year agreement, moved by Grant and seconded by Brown. Any discussion on this renewal? Okay, all those in favor? Motion carries. Thank you very much. All right, on to report number 2. We're going to leave ride sharing and car sharing for a moment and go to another topic. So we have the 2025 Homelessness Support Service Funding Recommendations. Perfect. And I'll hand things over first to CEO Warren.
Thank you very much, Chair. Lisa Kilpatrick, Manager of Community Development and Resilience, is here to introduce the Homelessness Support Service recommendations for funding awards. So Lisa, over to you.
You, through the chair to the directors, I was now going to introduce Michelle Hebert, who's our social planning coordinator, to walk through the report with you. But unfortunately, she got called away, so just bear with me as I present this. So what we have in front of us today is the 2025 Homelessness Support Service Grant Funding Recommendations. And I would like just to introduce, we have 2 members of the coalition leadership team in the audience, Adrienne Yep and Julie Henseleit. And, pardon? Okay. So the application intake was launched in December of 2025 and closed in on January 20th. We received 10 applications, 8 of which were eligible, for a total ask of $1,108,260. And we have $255,000 for the board to allocate. So in December, in the fall, CBRD staff began working with the coalition leadership team. The coalition has been in transition, and so staff worked in collaboration with the leadership team to provide administrative support on the intake application process and the adjudication process. As has been the process in the past, the applications were received and adjudicated by an adjudication committee. And that recommendation from the committee went to the March 5th coalition membership meeting for ratification. Approximately 14 members were present at the meeting. Unfortunately, only 3 were eligible to actually come to a consensus decision because everyone else had submitted applications to the program. And unfortunately, they felt that there was just an untenable onus on these 3 people to make the decisions. Following that meeting, the leadership team did announce that the coalition activities and meetings were being paused while the coalition mandate and structures are reviewed. So normally it would be the coalition membership that would ratify those recommendations and bring them to the board. Staff are recommending that the board consider the funding recommendations based on the Homelessness Support Services Adjudication Committee and allocate the funds as recommended. So we have 8 organizations and the recommendations of the committee. I'll just run through them quickly. The package does provide more detail on each of the applications. We've got the Comox Bay Care Society, and the recommendation there is for an allocation of $30,000 towards the peer-supported mobile outreach caravan, homelessness, and substance use and addiction service. The Comox Valley Head Injury Society, an allocation of $15,000 towards Transportation and Accessibility Initiative. The Comox Valley Transition Society, $42,000 towards Community Hub Services and Supports for Homelessness People. Dawn to Dawn, $30,000 towards Gakwas. So, I'm sorry, I mess this up every single time. Waglas renovations. Completion and opening, Lush Valley, $8,000 towards Lush Valley's Hot Meals for Connect Center, Solid $63,000 towards the Pierre Street Outreach Team, and Sunday Station, $25,000 towards Sunday Station free meal service. One note from the adjudication committee was for the board to consider possible additional funding from the HSS to support the Connect Center. So I'm going to leave it there and answer any questions from the board.
Thank you, Lisa. And first we have Director Brown.
Thanks, and thanks for the report on this. Given that the coalition was unable to endorse these recommendations. I have a few questions. So I understand that the coalition is going through some renovations potentially. That's great for that organization, but the March 5th meeting was not a membership meeting, it was a leadership meeting. And they do have quite a number of other organizations or representatives who would have been available to have input to these, which might have helped. So I'm curious about that. I'm not sure whether you can answer that or not. So that's my first curiosity. Secondly, it would be helpful for us, given that we have traditionally depended on the coalition to make these recommendations, to understand fully who the adjudication committee is. Is that just the leadership of the coalition and staff, or like, I don't know who that is? And also, what were so you've made the list of what we could allocate, but the initial ask is not included in that. So it's hard for me to tell, for instance, if the Comox Bay Care Society asked for $100,000 and we're giving them 30, and the Head Injury Society asked for 20,000 and we're giving them 15, and that would really help me understand the breadth of the ask, because you did say there's over like almost $2 million worth of ask here. And so where's that extra ask, I guess, coming from? Sorry, that was multiple questions.
Okay.
Hopefully you tracked that, because
Let's
I'm
see.
not sure I did.
So I think I'll just maybe take a stab at the first question, and then if Adrian or Julie, you want to step in, that would be great. So historically, the membership of the coalition has been member service organizations. Over the last couple of years, the membership was expanded to include sort of community allies and partners. The membership is about 40 organizations in the community. Of those 40 organizations, 14 were present at the meeting on March 5th. The second question, in terms of the makeup of the adjudication committee, in the fall, one of the conversations that we had with the leadership team was ensuring that there was representation of people with lived and living experience on an adjudication committee. So that was a shift from past years. The adjudication committee has been made up of members from the coalition. The leadership team did send out requests to the coalition membership requesting participation on an adjudication committee. Unfortunately, there wasn't any uptake on that. So volunteers were sought from the community. We had 5 members on the committee, which is in line for what has been on the committee, the number that have been on the adjudication committee in the past. And of the 5 members, it was comprised of people who lived and living experience, housing nonprofit leadership experience, and frontline experience.
Do you know how many peers were on that group?
3.
3. Nice.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. One thing that I will say is that there is in 2015, there was a board policy that was created for this process. And in the board policy, it does state that in the event that the coalition does not exist, or the membership is not able to make a recommendation, that the board can make recommendation or can decide in absence of the membership recommendation. Was there a?
And does that also say that the adjudication committee can make those recommendations?
It doesn't say that explicitly. That process,
but that's what,
yeah, that process within the coalition has been developed over the past few years.
Okay.
Great, thanks, Lisa. I see lots of lights on, so maybe we'll just have one question at a time, and then we'll keep going around the table as needed. I see Director Arbor next.
Yeah, thanks. It's a tough time in the housing world, so just want to thank those who are working in the space. I was on Denman this weekend on the afternoon with Denman Housing, because the province suspended current applications actually to their community housing fund. So we're feeling definitely a little bit abandoned compared to our expectations. And I'm sure that's felt across the housing community. Yeah, I guess my question is along similar lines. And also on background, I'm really interested in today's discussion and consideration because next time we talk on this next year, we'll have a housing authority and maybe we'll have some, the hired person's eyes on this. For me, that's definitely today really highlights a gap at this board in a relationship with the process because I would have, even in the report, I would have liked to see where the other million is or however, we're just seeing the recommended projects. We're not seeing the whole list. And I also realized even after 7 years in office, and my job is grants adjudication, I have no idea how the criteria is, how those decisions are made and whether they're scoring or whether it's like a round table. I actually have no line of sight on it. And I know I haven't sat at the, the housing table over the course of this question. So because part of my question is this report is like overly simple. I'm just wondering, like you're saying, there's 250 the money and look at the 5-year plan. And I'd like a sense as to whether there were applications that were left out that we could find into reserves or other places. This is just a really too basic report for me for us to make good decisions around. So I'm just wondering if there's an opportunity to defer and get more information to the next meeting, because if that helped the coalition to have like 400 grand this year, I'd like to know that. Like this is a zero option report. It's a take or leave it report. So I just have all these concerns. Thanks. So a little bit of enlightenment would be helpful.
Thank you.
Lisa, do you want to respond?
Sure,
Please, go
thank you.
ahead.
Through the chair to the directors, and those are great comments. Staff have supported the coalition in the past on their processes and how they brought the information forward. Given that the coalition is in transition, we just followed what has been done in the past. And so the report is similar to what's been done in the past. And that was the decision because we wanted to recognize that we were basically an administrative tool at this point. Certainly we can provide more information. We can bring more information forward, absolutely. The total amounts historically have not been provided. This is just a mirror of the reports that have been provided in the past. The comment on the amount of dollars that has been requested, I think that's fair, and we can definitely bring that forward. I will say that the adjudication committee, they out of the 10 applications, they felt that strongly about the 8 that they supported, and about ensuring that there was some they deliberated a long time over this, and they wanted to ensure that that there was enough support offered to a variety of needs in the community and spreading it across the 8. So happy we could defer this to another meeting. I guess the importance or recognition that the longer we defer, the longer it is that, before these funds actually get out into the community.
Great. And thanks for that context, Lisa. Director Hillian, please go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. And just before I ask my question, Lisa, I think you missed commenting on the Village Recovery Society.
Oh.
It's on the next page. And I don't know about other directors, but I'm not familiar with what this is. When I Google it, I get the Village Clinic, which is up on 5th Street, or the Village in Cumberland. Can you enlighten us on this, please?
Sure. So this is it's a proposal for a new second stage housing. And so it's to support men who are going into basically that they've possibly come out of rehabilitation there, and it's a sober house, and it provides them with wraparound support. Second stage housing has been identified as a significant gap in our community.
I do see that in the report, but so are you saying that the Village Recovery Society is a new organization for the purpose of providing a second stage recovery house? Yeah, so, well,
Lisa, could you just repeat that just for the people watching online?
The village created a new nonprofit in order to start this project.
oh, the Village Clinic.
It's a village clinic, yes.
Okay, all right, thanks, because there's also a man's recovery center in the community, and so I think there might be a bit of confusion around that. My main question though was, I understand Transition Society was one of the organizations that asked for significantly more than they're being granted, and the report does note that there's an opportunity to ask staff for an additional report in that regard. But I just wondered whether any of the grants that are being recommended were incorporated in the Transition Society's larger application. For example, the Lush Valley grant talks about serving food to the Connect Center, and I'm not sure whether the solid outreach process has any connection to services related to the Connect Center.
The Lush was the only one that referenced that they wished to seek funding due to limited funding from Connect. So they wanted to continue to be able to provide those services.
Happy with that, Director Hillian? Good. Okay. Dr. McCollum.
Yeah, I had similar questions around some of the information in the report. I am very curious to understand where, like the ask from Connect is listed, but none of the other ones from the ones that were chosen. And I mean, the context of this is that, you know, in terms of impact on downtown and the wider community, is Connect is providing a service that we absolutely need, and that if that doesn't continue, we will see major impacts across every community in our region, not just downtown Courtenay. I guess I just want to better understand like how we're prioritizing this, and because some of this information around Connect I think is very new, but I mean, the recommendation to provide funding towards Slush to provide hot meals at a location that we don't know if there's funding in place to keep it open. I'm just not sure how that got a higher priority than keeping the lights on and the services happening, where it not to diminish what they're doing, but in terms of, well, what would happen with that grant if the service isn't in place anymore. And I certainly understand the need that is trying to be addressed with this initiative with the Village Men's Recovery. It is a gap in our community, and it's wonderful to see that someone's trying to move this forward and take this initiative on. But if this is the seed money for something that's a multi-year project, and we're providing that over a service that is risking closure, like, I would just like to have more of that context. And if the ask was for one of these that wanted $500,000 and we're going to give them 20,000, it's like, is that actually going to move the project forward? Should we actually reallocate that? So I feel like I don't have enough information, and just the context of Connect situation really it skews how we weight this stuff, because in past years, we haven't been looking at that closure in the context of allocating this money. So yeah, I think my preference is maybe to defer it until we have a little bit more information. And also just that how this is moving through, we've had a process in which we've had recommendations come through the coalition, and even that's been more disjointed than other years. And then we have this additional pressure, and I'm just reluctant to make a decision right now that yeah, that could add to the challenges at Connect.
So I can try to weigh in. I've heard many comments about deferring the report to get some more information, and I think Lisa noted we can certainly do that. I was waiting for the comments to slow down, but I think maybe I'll weigh in now. So we can certainly defer the report, come back with that more information, and a bit more context around the adjudication process. I would concur with Lisa in that this is a similar level of information that has been presented in previous years, and that's been sufficient. And we've certainly relied on the good work of the coalition and leadership team and the membership to bring that forward. But clearly the board's got some greater interest in some of the details. So we can do that. On the piece about Connect and the reference to the full ask that it's in there, I think the adjudication committee and the staff, we certainly understand the need that is there. And I can share that we've been working with municipal staff, CBRD staff have been working with municipal staff and elected leadership at the Comox Valley Regional District and the municipalities. And we are engaging with the province. We've had one, I think, positive conversation so far, and there's additional conversations just around some sustainable funding there. So more to be discussed there, but recognizing here that in the staff report, we talked about an option to provide the board with some more information around some additional supports if possible through either the reserve fund that we have in HSS, previous commitments that could be considered for a reallocation, as well as some prior year surplus. So that was the nature of the reference there to Connect. But at the very least, coming back to the board with additional information, we can do that and refer the report to a future meeting. I don't know if we can make it for next week in terms of the additional information, but certainly the April meeting, and that delays getting the money into the community. But I hear the board's interest in providing that additional context.
So just process question, we could delay recommendation 1, but still vote on recommendation 2?
You could. Recommendation 2 is really about asking for that report back to the board.
Okay, awesome. All right, Mayor Wells.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Mr. Warren, for your update there as well. My comments were really going to be around, first of all, thanking the adjudication committee for the work that they've done. I know it's a tough thing. I've was a little bit more aware of those conversations, 5-10 years ago. But those are it's tough when you're literally picking winners and losers, but people are doing it with the best intention. So I just really want to honor that. And also want to thank all the municipal leaders, the CBRD, Chair Kerr, who took my calls last week, and Chair Cole Hamilton, who is in Africa right now, who, a lot of effort has been put into this. So I just, from the city's perspective, again, this is something when we, in the context of Connect, which is taking up a lot of oxygen, it is quite important, and I just want to really thank everybody for their comments around that and the attention that it has been given. So thanks for that.
Thanks for those comments. And Director Morin.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I think we're leaning towards deferring and getting more information for sure. And I do understand, in the past, we haven't received that more detailed information. When I see it, I don't know if the requests are in line with previous years. That's a clarification question I have. Like, we have a $853,260 kind of deficit in terms of the ask. Is that in line with past years? Because I've never heard that there's been such a large number of requests compared to what's been allocated. And again, we haven't received that detail in the past, but we are in a unique situation with the transition. And I do appreciate all, people trying to navigate the challenges with the restructuring and things like that of the coalition, but I do feel like some detail is warranted. So anyway, that my main question right now is just, is this, 1 million in requests compared to 255 potentially allocated in line with previous years?
There we go. There has been more funds requested than was available in the past. One other process changed in this past year, and that is at Comox. They developed their own process for receiving applications and adjudicating, whereas in the past, the coalition has also been able to say, well, that we have too much here, and Comox, and make recommendations to Comox based on the same application process. So that's one thing that has changed. I think, sorry, what was your second question?
Yeah, so are you saying that, like, are there separate requests that are being made to Comox or have been in the past but haven't been this time, or?
So Comox, in the past, the recommendations have come to the board and to Comox at the same time. So the coalition has made recommendations out of the same applications for both communities. This year, Comox had an earlier intake and its own adjudication process. So that sort of alleviated some of the over demand on HSS at the same time that Comox had made funds available for some of that.
Okay.
So the answer is that yes, there has been more requested than has been available in the past, not to this amount. What I will say that 2 applications amounted to 510,000. So there were 2 applications that asked for the full amount.
And those are the 2 applications that are not on here?
One application was not, there were no recommendations to allocate any money to that application of 255,000. The other application was from the Transition Society, who requested the full 255,000.
Yeah, sorry, just one more quick
Sure, quick
follow-up,
follow-up.
if that's okay. Yeah, I mean, I think there's, we know that Connect is the hub and probably has a greater need. We also know that, or I think many of us feel that the province does need to up their share in that. So I'm also concerned about some of the other organizations that maybe are also in need, but are not, are just getting a fraction of what they receive. So anyway, I think getting a little bit more information would be helpful. Thank you.
Thanks. And Director Hillian, you're next, and then we'll go to Director Arbor.
Thanks, Chair. I want to acknowledge that had the province followed through with the commitments that it made, we'd have the Braidwood Center operating now, and we would have been able to close the Connect Center, and we wouldn't be looking for local dollars to support continued operation of it. Having said that, I want to acknowledge the work of the people in the community, including those in the room today who are continuing to work in the trenches. I think it's significant that also in line with what Director Arbor pointed out, that all these grants pretty much are for operational costs as opposed to bricks and mortar, and which means that there isn't larger amounts of money coming from other funding sources to actually build housing. And so our organizations are stuck in challenging times, and local government is being called upon to help out. With that, I was going to move the deferral motion, but still a speaker, so I'll save that. Thanks.
Okay, we'll come back to you, Director Hillian and Director Arbor.
Yeah, thanks. I just realized, I mean, I was surprised to hear other board members kind of feel some discomfort and hence the deferral motion. I thought I might be the only one who was confused. but that also made me think, I think one unfortunate thing that we did as a board this term was to actually get rid of reports by our appointees to organizations. I don't know why we did that. I was opposed to that. I actually don't even know if we have a representative from CVRD on the coalition. Like, and if we do, who is that person? Because there's clearly a political situation here beyond the administrative. And that is why we have delegates to organizations to actually show leadership on those organizations. We used to report back to the board as point person, and we've abandoned that the last 3 years. So here we are spending 30 minutes on an item that I don't know who, I don't even know if we have a lead. So I would love to know if we do. And if we don't, I think we should appoint someone to the coalition from the CVRD board to be the point person. Thank you.
Sure. I'll make a quick comment and then hand things over to the CAO. Just as a point, as the representative from the town of Comox on the coalition, a number of the recent meetings have been members only. So political officials weren't there. And so there wouldn't be much info coming your way, even if we did have a rep. And I'll hand things over to the CAO.
No, the CVRD board has not appointed a rep to the coalition at this time. There's been appointments to different organizations over the years. And I think it kind of ebbs and flows in terms of what those appointments look like and the level of participation. But currently, no, there is no appointment from the board to the coalition.
So what I'll suggest we do is maybe dispense with receipt, and then I'll hand things back to Director Hillian to make a motion. So we have the report up for receipt. Anyone opposed to receipt? And this is a vote of the areas, Courtney and Cumberland. Okay, motion passes. And back to Director Hillian.
Thanks, Chair. I'll move that we defer recommendation 1 to a future meeting and request a more detailed staff report.
We have a seconder. Any comments on this motion? Okay, and again, a vote. Would this be a vote? Yes, probably just of the areas, Courtney and Cumberland. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion passes. Okay, recommendation 2 has been moved, and that is that a report come back to consider additional homelessness support service funding to the Comox Valley Transition Society to support the Connect Community Hub services. Any discussion on this motion? Okay, again, a vote of the areas, Courtney and Cumberland. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Great. Any other comments on this topic before we move on to the third item in reports? Great. Okay. Next, item 3 under reports is the 2026 local government elections report. Perfect. And hand things over to Lisa.
Yeah, so this is a report we bring forward when we are starting to plan general elections. So most importantly here is for the board to appoint the chief election officer and the deputy chief election officers. And we've also included endorsement of our agreements that we typically do with Islands Trust and Comox Valley Schools to conduct their elections on their behalf. And then as a new addition to this kind of report, we've also included a policy for staffing and remuneration. And just so we've got clarity around that as we head into our election planning for the general election in October. So pretty straightforward, I think, unless there's any questions.
Great. Thanks, Lisa. Any questions on the report? Okay, I will dispense with receipt. Anyone opposed to receipt? Motion carries, and we have 3 recommendations. All right, first one has been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Okay, recommendation number 2, and that is that the board authorize staff to enter into election services agreement with the Islands Trust and Comox Valley Schools to conduct the elections. Any discussion? Let's vote. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Number 3 is that the board approve the policy about the election and assent voting staffing and remuneration. And that's in Appendix C of the report for those following along at home. Any discussion? All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion carries. All right. Moving along to item 4 and under reports. This is the 2026 Government Advocacy Strategy. And over to staff.
Thank you, Chair. Christian Weil, our Senior Manager of Strategic Initiatives, will be introducing this report and providing support to the discussion. Christian.
Thank you. I'm pleased to present the 2026 Government Advocacy Strategy for your consideration. This is intended to focus the CVRD's resources to support the board's strategic priorities. Its purpose is to draw attention to specific priority topics and find regional collaboration where possible, to gain more traction with senior governments and avoid diluting our requests. While remaining mindful of the fiscal climate and economic pressures currently being experienced by all levels of government, we do feel there are opportunities to connect on priority issues. The strategy proposes continuing advocacy on the topics of cultural heritage protection, permit wait times, and sustainable funding for emergency management grant programs. It also identifies support for Comox First Nation Treaty and regional transportation priorities as new areas of advocacy. The recommended actions are intended to be realistic, and they range from addressing specific resolutions through AVICC to continued staff work and targeted requests for minister meetings. The full strategy is attached as part of your staff report, and I'm happy to take any questions you have at this time.
Thank you very much. Any questions? It will dispense with receipt. Anyone opposed to receipt? Motion carries. There's a recommendation. Moved and seconded, Grant and Morin. And again, this is to improve the advocacy topics and implementation actions as outlined in the report. Any discussion? All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion carries. All right, moving along to number 5, 2026 to 2030 recommended financial plan. And again, over to staff. Yes, thank you.
Thanks very much. And coming to the table are Kelly Broughton, Manager of Financial Planning, and Lucy Wacharek, our Chief Financial Officer. And I'm not going to steal any of the thunder from the presentation, apart from saying that this is the culmination of a lot of time and effort, both by staff and yourselves as elected officials at your various committee, commission meetings, and board meetings over the past couple of months. And with that, Lucy, over to you.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon to the CAO, to the chair. The staff and I are pleased to be here today to bring to you the CVRD 2026 recommended financial plan. So as we are in March, we are at that final stage of the budget process. So all our CVRD services have now received the required endorsement of proposed budgets. So where follow-up amendments were required, these have now been completed. 2025 carry forward amounts and year-end surplus figures have been finalized. The individual service budgets have now been drawn together into what's before you today in the recommended. This presentation will be a short one. It'll focus primarily on 2026 and the changes that occurred from when we delivered the proposed budget to the board in late January to what's in front of you today, and with all the changes resulting from the deliberation meetings, as we've said. I'll just do a quick touch point on the operating the capital budget. I'll circle in again on levels of taxation and the by core service and the implications to our households. Quick update on public participation and a recommendation next steps. The recommended operating budget is $122.1 million. This is a change of just over 17 million from the proposed. The biggest component of that change is related to the 2025 carry forward and surplus. So with 2025 year-end process almost complete, the unfinished projects and the surplus positions have been added to this recommended budget. 9 million represents carry forward projects and 7 million the surplus. Some notable items, that being the changes from proposed to recommended put forth during budget deliberation. The largest item here relates to Service 645 recreation facilities. and the decision of the board to have asset life cycling funded with the short-term debt as opposed to long-term. And this results in $1.4 million in less interest cost over the course of that debt. Secondly, Service 601 includes $200,000 as a transfer to reserve, which is earmarked for the new field amenity program. The proposed budget for Service 600 recreation grants was amended to include $25,000 to support a FIFA event. And lastly, some areas where additional grants have been included for community groups. This to support aging infrastructure of our community halls, as well as to assist with some operational needs. The recommended capital budget is $97.8 million. The change from proposed represents carry forward projects. The largest component is in infrastructure for our utility services and building and land improvements. Just to give some context around that 53 million, this slide lists some of the largest projects remaining in progress at the end of 2025. And this ranges from multiple fire halls builds to significant utility infrastructure needs. There are some recreation items and such as the remaining component of the turf field and various parks in electoral areas. It's not untypical to have significant carry forwards in capital. These projects do require the board to give overall endorsement to the project budget. And then as you're aware, these projects oftentimes take more than 1 year. So as we move on, this slide helps to demonstrate how taxation has changed over the budget process. And it's broken down by core service. At the proposed stage, taxation was included at $36.9 million, this being a change of $2 million from the 2025 levels, or 5.8%. The recommended budget includes $37.6 million in taxation, and that brings that up to $2.7 million, or 7.6%. The largest movement, as you can see here, is in the area of recreation. So what does this recommended budget mean to Comox Valley households? Staff have completed the updates to tax rates per services and have refreshed the estimated implications to the households. The change range year over year increases range from $18.41 to $68.27 for municipalities. On average, this is $46 a year, or $3.83 a month. This slide includes estimates prepared for the proposed budget as a contrast. The tax increase from proposed to recommended for municipal partners is approximately $13 a year per single family residential property. And in our electoral areas, year over year increases range from $83.90 to $145.54. The difference from where we stand in this proposed in this budget process to what is being, the difference from where we started in this budget process to what is in front of you today is in that last column. The difference ranging from a decrease of $12 for Hornby Island to $23 per year increase for Area A. The proposed budgets for water supply and sewage treatment remained unchanged. That's with the exception of carry forwards and surplus. These two utilities represent 20% of the overall CVRD operating budget. And if we rolled solid waste management into there, that would be almost 40%. The slide demonstrates the steady increase needed in utility rates and parcel tax over the next 3 years. And this is in order to meet the operational needs for these critical services. The sewage levy shows large increases will be with the passing of each year, 17% for 2027, 11% for 2028. This is planned and needed to address the significant upgrade for the sewage treatment plant, and staff continue to look for grant support from other levels of government to help alleviate some of the future stress here. We only showed the slide going forward 3 years, since rate reviews will need to be completed once again. And this will happen over 2026, 2027, and anticipating that as we go out past these 3 years, that what we currently have planned will likely change. The public engagement process has been completed or almost completed. The Engage site included 2 questions and 2 pieces of feedback, and we had about 170 views. The public will have further opportunity to engage through what is expected to be about 4 or 5 pop-up events in the community, and this will happen early June. And we've timed that with the distribution of tax bills going out, and we just feel that maybe citizens may be more in tune in what's happening with taxation and services, and that's why we have those planned to go out at that time of year. The options that we have in front of the board today is to endorse the recommended budget and proceed with 3 readings, or recommend further adjustments. Our next steps, so once the bylaw is fully established, the budget package information currently on the website will be updated with the approved budget. New budget is activated within our internal systems, and this will allow the departments to move ahead with plans. The requisitions are sent out to our partnering municipalities, and for rural taxations, information is forwarded to the province. For our rural areas, just a reminder that we do still continue to prepare the tax inserts, and this will provide a means to inform of implications, service enhancements, and also provide some educational information. And with that, staff would like to recommend that this recommended budget be adopted. And we're here for any questions, further questions that you may have.
Great. Thank you, Lucy and Kelly, and the tremendous amount of work, in just a few slides to capture all the work that's been done over the last year, really, to get to this point. Thank you. I know we'll probably have some questions. So I see Director Arbor up first.
Yes, thank you for the summary. It was well done. There's just one figure that the general public cares about, and that's the year-over-year overall percentage increase. And I don't think I saw it in the presentation. Was it? Did I miss it early in the presentation? Oh, okay, I must have. Yeah. So what was it?
You want me to go back to that? 7.
Yes, thank you.
Go back. 7.6%.
7.6% overall. Okay, so that's better than where we started. And as staff pointed out, we're adding the housing authority and a few other items in there. So I think personally, I feel pretty good, including at the ESC, around our efforts to shave some dollars there for our residents, and regionally, it looks like we did the same. So that's good. Thank you.
Just to be clear where we started, should point out from a proposed perspective, we were at that 5.8, and it's been increased to the 7.6%, with really, in essence, the biggest change in there was the moving from that the long-term debt to the short-term debt. So making payments more over the short term, saving a fair bit in interest over the long term.
That is the key driver. Yeah. That's good. And then there were surprises like the internet on Horby, where we're paying it off like quicker, and yeah.
Yes.
Cool. Thank you.
Okay.
Just looking around the room. Oh, there we go. Mayor Bratton.
Thank you for the presentation and for the extended work on this. I guess you start again tomorrow, probably. I guess I'm shocked that there were only 2 questions on the Engage site. I'm not sure. I'm shocked and I'm disappointed. But I do see that there was quite a lot of engagement there, and surely this board are not the only people that are looking at, because I obviously accessed it. So do we collect any other, do we have a sense of, people just got it and thought, no, this all looks great? Or do we have a sense of what people were and how they were engaging, and whether they were getting anything out of it, and whether we need to do anything with that, I guess?
Yep. To be fair, this is always a difficult piece from a budget perspective, and we want to make sure that we keep trying to enhance this and find the ways that public really want to engage. Our lack of questions out there may signal that the community is okay with it. It's hard to tell. Director Arbor always reminds us of and I know for all of you, there's lots of interaction with your community. So what's out there and Engage isn't the only the only type of engagement that happens, and pleased with the number of views. And I forgot to write down what we had last year, but they're like, as you're saying, there's a lot of educational information simply on the site. So that's a really good thing as well. We do have phone calls throughout the year, so it's another piece. And every year we keep trying to, and we will continue to enhance what we're doing. And it'll be quite interesting, the type of results that we may get. We're hopeful from these pop-up events, because what we do know is it's better for us to go to the citizens instead of having them come here. We've tried that many times in our life, doesn't seem to work very well. So we will go out to where citizens are, and we're told to bring food, prizes, have some fun things for them to do, and we will collect a feel for how they're feeling about everything, and we'll also take an opportunity to maybe report back to the board on that as well.
Can I just follow up?
Yep, please go ahead.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I appreciate that we are, always kind of looking for new ways to engage people. And it's not just this board, obviously. Nobody comes to the info sessions that Cumberland puts on either. Nobody cares about the budget until it hits their mailbox. Do we have a prompt on the Engage site? Sorry, I'm not there anymore. That says, do you have any overall feedback, or like something that's saying, maybe people think that they need to have a question about the information that they're reading, and maybe they don't fully understand how it all fits together, and they don't know how to ask a question or give their feedback. So yeah, just curious about that, whether there's just an open, like, tell us what you think.
Through the chair, the feedback element is that is the essence of it. So
Okay.
you don't have to have a question, just provide us whatever thoughts that you may have. One thing that may be helpful, we can use that tool to further make it appealing and easier for the community to engage. Obviously, we have thousands of pieces of paper out there that's around budget, and it's not simple, it's complex. We can use GIS tools, for example, to put some further information out there, maybe to be able to show in a visual way what it is that we're doing out in the community. And that may garner some additional feedback or comments from the community as well.
Just on the topic of engagement, just to quickly chime in, I mean, maybe, and I agree with Director Arbor that, seems the public mainly just care about that one number, the percentage change over year. Maybe it's how we present it, and thinking about like interactivity and how we can make things more interactive. Last year I went into a grade 10 civics class in Comox and brought Monopoly money and gave about $50 million in Monopoly money to these groups of tables, and asked them to allocate that money to their city, sewer, water, recreation, etc. One group just built 3 hockey rinks, which we know wouldn't be enough. But, I think, of course, there wasn't enough money for all the things that needed to be done, and they had to make decisions in groups to where to allocate that money and what they would cut and save for next year, which is kind of like what each of us do here around this table or municipally. So maybe it's providing some kind of interactive online option where people can play with the, like playoff indicators for hockey, right? What if this team wins this many or loses this many? What happens to their playoff odds? Maybe we could give people toggle switches and have them see what the budget would look like if they were allocating. Anyways, just some thoughts about how to, get more. It was great that there were 170-ish views, but yeah, more feedback would be great. Maybe it's just how we ask. So sorry for that little comment. On to Director Arbor.
Since we're on the topic, might as well exhaust it. I think we just need to stop. We just need to recognize that Engage is a failed tool to give us any kind of indicator. So let's stop reporting on that. In my area, we do not have a problem with interactivity around the budget. There's literally like hundreds, if not in the thousands, of interactions and feedback on the budget, service by service. I've got 150 nonprofits that closely watch the budget process and who got what next to them. And on Hornby, the hire process is super exhaustive as it is on Denman. Budget starts in October. James receives emails once, twice a week. Right now, today on the last budget day, Denman Island Bulletin Board blew up. And they're like, what the, you're funding the fence, the graffiti fence through the fire department? So now it's a big issue. And they're asking me what's happening. I actually can't remember because we adjudicated on that too. It's like a $3,000 item. People in the rural areas are paying very close attention to the services around them. And I'm sure our staff is aware of that. It's just that none of them, to get to the Engage site, you need a PhD in website navigation, because first you go to CBRD and then you get to this funny page with all these different tabs around the financial planning process. Somewhere in there, there's Engage, but it looks like a commercial or an advertising. So I would never click on that. Then it gets you out of the website. Like Engage just doesn't work for budget. The conversations happen in the communities prior to the presentations and with interactions with us. So I would say we don't need to invent anything new. We just need to recognize where the action is. Thanks.
Great comments all around. Okay, so any other questions at all for Lucy on this topic? Okay, we'll dispense with receipt. Anyone opposed to receipt? Great, motion passes. And this recommendation that the financial plan and capital expenditure program bylaw number 910 be given first, second, and third reading. Any discussion? All those in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Great. Thank you again, Lucy and Kelly, for all the work you did on this. All right. Round of applause. Yes. Okay, we have 5 sets of minutes here to review and pass. So the first was the transit minutes from January 13th. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? And motion carries. Next is Electoral Area Services Committee, February 11th. Great. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Number 8, Electoral Area Services Committee, February 23rd. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? Motion passes. And Sewage Commission, February 24th. And any discussion? Anyone opposed? And motion passes. And lastly, Recreation Committee from the same day, February 24th. Any discussion? Anyone opposed to receipt? And motion carries. All right, moving on to item number 11. We have the Electoral Area Services Committee, March 16th, and there were some recommendations from that committee meeting from yesterday. Great, and this is a vote of the areas. Any discussion at all on this first DVP, DV4C 25 for Blackburn Stewart? Okay, anyone opposed? Motion carries. Recommendation number 2, thank you, is development permit DP8C 25, Alders Beach Resort Area. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you kindly. And this is a DVP DP2C26 in Mount Washington, Fire Services, Protection Services. So any discussion on this? Anyone opposed? Motion passes, and we go to recommendation 4. Thank you for the efficient motioning. That's great. This is the ALC application 3C25 for Green Coast Sand and Gravel. Any discussion on this? Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Okay, on to some bylaws and resolutions, and then we do have an addendum item, so stay tuned for that. G1, bylaw 905. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Number 2, this is bylaw 906. Building bylaw 681. And this is a vote of the areas only. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? Great. And again, any discussion on third reading? Anyone opposed? Motion carries. All right, number 3, bylaw 910 for Comox Valley District Financial Plan. Great. And this is for everyone to vote on. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And again, any discussion? Anyone opposed? Motion carries. I feel like I'm playing tennis here, my neck going back and forth. Recommendation number 4, bylaw 810. This is the regional growth strategy bylaw. Thank you. Any discussion on the growth strategy bylaw? Okay. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. And next one is number 5. This is bylaw number 868. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Number 6 is bylaw 869. Anyone opposed? All right, motion carries. I assume there was no discussion. Bylaw number 870, number 7 on the agenda for bylaws. This is the Black Creek Oyster Bay Water Local Area Services bylaw. Again, any discussion? Anyone opposed? Motion carries. We're almost there, folks. Number 8 is bylaw number 891, Jackson Drive Sewer Service Parcel Tax bylaw. And anyone, discussion? Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Number 9 is bylaw number 897, Water Extension South Connection Service Establishment bylaw. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? Motion carries. And another one, number bylaw 898 on the same topic. And this is to deal specifically with the service loan authorization bylaw. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? Motion carries. On to number 11, bylaw 900, Comox Valley Economic Development Service Conversion bylaw. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? Motion carries. All right. And for being so efficient, we get to discuss an addendum, and I believe, thank you. I believe we need the full approval of the board, unanimous decision to have this discussion, 2/3. Majority, perfect. Okay. Anyone opposed to having this addendum come to our discussion tonight? All right, motion carries. We can have a chat about it. And this is the Comox Valley Situation Table request for support. And I'll turn it over to staff.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks to the board for considering this as a late item on the agenda. There is a time constraint with respect to the application. Lisa Kilpatrick is here to introduce the report, and we can support the discussion if there's questions from the board. So, Lisa.
Thank you, through the chair to the directors. This is a report back from the delegation that the board received in December from the Comox Valley Situation Table requesting consideration for CVRD to be the fiscal host or sponsor for the Situation Table. The board directed us to take a look at this request through the new community partnerships request policy, and so that is what we've done. I won't go into detail about the situation table. That was all provided in the delegation. But just as a reminder that the situation tables are prevalent around the province. There are about 50 of them around the province. All except 2 have local governments as a sponsor. And these tables are for local agencies, both public and nonprofits, to collaborate towards crisis response and prevention for community members and families, and ideally decrease the risk that they have in coming out of crisis. So a couple of key points that I just want to make about this request is that the situation table in the Comox Valley started in 2023. It is a jurisdiction-wide, meaning all of the Comox Valley and areas and communities have different organizations that participate and respond to the residents in those areas. The John Howard Society of North Island has been the sponsor for the situation table. Unfortunately, they are not able to continue that because at least in terms of sponsoring to receive the funding directly from the province, because the Ministry of Public Safety and Solicitor General will only award the funds directly to local government now. So over the last few years, the annual budget's been approximately 17,000. The ministry does have a $100,000 grant that is available. It is funds that they have to allocate before the end of the year, and it is a one-time funding. So they don't anticipate any additional funding to come for situation tables. The initial funding that was provided by the province through this for this situation, their situation table program, was really to establish the situation tables, build capacity within the communities to have those situation tables, and ideally for the communities to be able to take those on from there. And there may be funding in the future for some training for the participants around the table, but there's nothing confirmed at this point. So this fund, the one-time funding, will support the continued capacity building of our local situation table to ensure that it operates as a structured, sustainable, and effective collaborative model. So one of the key pieces that we did learn from the ministry was that we are able to contract out to a local organization who can oversee the coordination of the situation table. So with that information, we were able to move through the community partnerships request policy and assess the various conditions. So the policy outlines 3 areas. The first is the internal conditions, so looking at whether or not the request that's come in from the community group is in alignment with CVRD services. We don't have a direct service that where staff would be could provide staff resources to directly coordinate the situation table. We do have under the emergency management the Comox Valley Community Justice Service, which has would be the closest aligned. And we have had some conversations with the Community Justice Center on possibly being that third-party organization. We are definitely the situation table does align with 3 of our drivers. However, our community partnerships, our Indigenous relations, and then our accessibility, diversity, equity, and inclusion drivers. So, and then we do have our poverty reduction assessment and strategy, which definitely emphasizes the need for crisis support. At this time, we don't have staff, as I mentioned, either under a service or just generally staff capacity to manage the coordination of the situation table, but we do have some capacity to be able to apply for the funding right now and then obviously manage a third-party contract. As James said, there is a time limitation with this in that the province needs to receive an application by this Friday in order to consider the Comox Valley, funding coming to the Comox Valley for the situation table. Otherwise, they will need to look to another area, community. A second area that we look at through this assessment is around external conditions. So that's really looking at the capacity of the organization or the entity that has brought forward that request. So the key piece with the situation table is that it is a non-registered entity. So the situation table doesn't have any formal structure that can take on any legal or fiduciary responsibility. So they are required to seek an organization to work with that can manage those on their behalf. The situation table has exhausted the funding, the original funding that was provided to the John Howard Society. The other thing that we look at under the external conditions is the risk associated with the situation table. As I mentioned, it is a non-registered entity, so that would CVRD would assume all those risks. But the way the situation table is designed, it's really the service of coordination, the administration of the table. CVRD or the third-party organization wouldn't be taking on any of the risk of the actions that are then taken on behalf or by the agencies that are around the table. They would be taking on those actions under their existing mandates and services. The situation table has demonstrated a benefit to the community over the last couple of years, and those stats were provided in the delegation. One of the key pieces or key notable pieces is just that it has shown a lowering of the risk of 42% of the individuals that they have supported. This is one piece of work that the ministry does provide, the situation table and also the communities that are involved is really collecting and analyzing the data from the situation table to provide back to the table agency partners as well as the communities. There is evidence of a strong collaboration here. We have the situation table has 19 local agencies that participate, and there is a constant source of referrals from at least 8 other organizations to that table. And from what we understand, that there's a large appreciation and respect amongst those partnering agencies. And then the last area that we looked at was just around the risk and resource management. Many of these pieces that I've already mentioned, we don't have a legal contract with the province. It really is here's funding, and however, it is up to CVRD to ensure that the fiduciary oversight in spending those dollars, and obviously overseeing a legally binding document or agreement with a third party. In terms of other risk, I think probably the main risk here is probably a reputational risk, in that what happens when that funding is expended. That funding could last 4 to 5, I would say probably maximum 4 or 5 years. And then what happens when there is no more funding, and whether, CVRD will be looked at that point to continue the recommendation that staff has put on the table for the board to consider, is that we commit to the ongoing sponsorship, provided that there is funding. But otherwise, this isn't a request for CVRD to take on this issue and situation table indefinitely. So we've got, based on that information, three recommendations for the board to consider. One is to apply for the funding, accept the funding on the condition that we identify a third party to oversee the table and the coordination, and that CVRD doesn't commit any additional resources to the table now or ongoing.
Thanks, Lisa. And I see we have Mayor Wells up first.
Thank you, Chair. And I'm really glad to see this coming forward in one sense to actually discuss it. And so I do thank the board and staff for getting it to this point. I will just make a comment that when this was first brought to the city of Courtenay, we did sign on and say this was something that we would love to see in our community, but we were quite steadfast in the fact that this table is coordinating, generally speaking, provincial and federal agencies or nonprofits or folks that are funded provincially or federally. And so it didn't really make sense that it get paid for from the municipal taxpayer, and that it should be paid for at the provincial federal level. So I'm glad to see that they did step up with this one-time grant. But again, that does, as I think Lisa has very articulated and repeated several times, the way the resolution is stated really does put a sunset clause on this, and really requires potentially some advocacy, which to keep going back after the province to make sure that they fund this critical thing. I've seen the work that they've done. I've very impressed with the work that they've been able to do with very little resources. But at the end of the day, I'll go back to the fact that this is by and large coordinating provincial and federal efforts. So I'd like to see them step up and continue to pay this down the road. My one question really is just around the wages and whether or not something like CPI is envisioned in there, just given the fact that there's a wage amount, but I wasn't sure if that might change over the years, given the fact that we can stretch this out for a bit.
So at this time, we haven't considered what that budget would be. That would be up to the third party organization to determine.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Oh, Director Hillian.
Thanks, Chair. Just for reference, spent some time at the Community Justice Center board meeting yesterday, discussing this possibility that they may take it on. And, of course, on the one hand, you have something that is of value to the community that will bring in $100,000 that will primarily cover administrative costs and a contract for somebody to work part-time, 5 hours a week maybe. And then on the other hand, you have a certain administrative burden. And as Mayor Wells suggested, the feeling that you can't shake that the provincial agencies involved should actually be doing this. But having said that, I think it was a good report that was presented to us, and I think it's worthwhile. If I had a preference, I would want us to, over the 5 years that the funding may last, 3 or 4 or 5 years, however many, would want us to try and convince one of those provincial agencies to take on the sponsorship of it on a continuation basis. And apart from that, I'll support the resolution. Thanks.
Thanks, Director Hillian. Director Morin.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I think it was really well stated by Mayor Wells and also Director Hillian. I'm looking at the sentence that says the one-time funding will support capacity building to stabilize and enhance the situation table, et cetera, et cetera. And not entirely accurate, because the funding is only going to support the work of the situation table. And let's be honest, it's not going to support capacity building. So I think that, that intention through the funding is not accurate. And if this recommendation is for staff not to commit any resources, I think we will fall in, within 3 to 5 years, we'll fall into no funding, and things will land where they land. But I am in complete agreement. I don't like to see the province pulling out of it. It seems like that's sort of the theme right now. Let's pull out and let's stop funding projects and let's hand it over to local government, which I'm not happy about in the least, but I do support at least getting another 3 to 5 years out of this really valuable initiative, and we'll see where things are at when that funding dries up. Thank you.
Okay, looking around the room, I don't see any other lights on. So maybe we can dispense with receipt. Anyone opposed to receipt? Oh, anyone opposed to receipt of the report? Okay, motion carries. And sorry. Okay, great. Any more discussion on this? Okay, all those in favor? Anyone opposed? Motion carries. All right, that was the last item. Any questions from the media today? Don't see any. Termination. All right. Thank you, everyone, and have a great evening and drive safely.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.